To make those rainbows in my mind. When I think of you sometime, and I wanna spend some time with you. Just the two of us. We can make it if we try. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. Building castles in the sky. Just the two of us. You and I.
Yeah. Yo, sports fans, it's Tarek, your guide to the game, coming at you on May 5th, 2025. This is where the scores, the stories, and the showdowns collide. From the court to the field, from the boxing ring to the MMA cage. We'll be discussing the heroics, the tragedies, the controversies, the good parts, the bad parts. And this last weekend had plenty of heroics, and it also had plenty of tragedy, because there's a lot of people complaining like old ladies about what happened this last weekend. So let's just jump right in. And we're going to start with Turki Al-Sheikh's Fatal Fury City of Wolves card on May 2nd, which took place historically in the middle of Times Square. It was unbelievable. It's like a video game. Imagine these boxers in the ring just surrounded by Times Square. It was fantastic to look at. The aesthetic of that was just unbelievable. I never thought I would see that. So it was just a spectacular venue. And although it was cordoned off, it was a little bit weird. So the seating, there wasn't really a crowd there. It was surrounded by thousands of people in Times Square. There's a lot of people who showed up, I guess, to see it on the screens. But there wasn't really, it was fenced in. And the fights themselves were promoted spectacularly. They're doing these boxing movie trailers these days, and these movie trailers have been absolutely just fun to watch, very entertaining. So it is a great promotion. It was greatly promoted. It was hyped up big. Some of these fighters are very popular, like Ryan Garcia, for example. Devin Haney, I guess, has his contingent as well. And it was supposed to be a great historic weekend in Times Square, but didn't quite live up to the hype. Now look, if you're a fight fan and you're tuning in to see people beat the hell out of each other, and for there to be just violence, for it to be a war, you did not get that. Okay? Now, boxing is the theater of the unexpected, as Larry Merchant used to put it. The great Larry Merchant. He used to call it the theater of the unexpected. And the problem with boxing is that it's unpredictable. Fights are unpredictable. Boxing's unpredictable. It could live up to the hype. It could not live up to the hype. Crazy things happen all the time. And crazy things did happen. It just was a terrible card. I mean, Haney and Ramirez, for example. Haney made his comeback to the ring after more than a year. And in his last fight, he was absolutely thrashed by Ryan Garcia. He really made camp on the canvas for quite some time and got beaten pretty thoroughly. But Ryan Garcia was busted for using Ostarine. So the decision was overturned. Garcia had won the decision and the title, but it was overturned. It was called a no contest. Haney got his 0 back and his title back. So he was out for mostly a year trying to rebuild himself. And this was his return. And it was Ryan Garcia's return as well. Ryan Garcia had returned after the drama and the tumultuousness of his life. And he came back, and they were supposed to both fight on this card to set up a rematch that they have signed, to settle the controversy once and for all. Was it the Ostarine that did it? Was it the left hook that did it? Me personally, I don't think Ostarine helps you land punches. Okay, it doesn't make your timing better. It doesn't make you a more intelligent person. several fights leading up to the Ryan Garcia fight for Haney, he was getting caught with punches, getting hurt. His legs didn't seem mostly there. There was a bit of a decline if anyone paid attention. So I wasn't surprised personally when he got beat up by Ryan Garcia. Now the Ostarine, of course, is going to taint the victory. And it should taint the victory. Why are you getting busted with anything? I mean, you should eat food, drink water, take vitamins, be very careful with what you ingest into your body. Now, we don't know. Ryan Garcia has made some allegations about, some conspiracy against him, and God knows what it is. The issue is when you do drugs, when you use substances, God knows what he's done. Sometimes they're laced with substances that may violate the rules. But let me digress. Both these gentlemen, these fighters, made their return to the ring in separate fights. Ryan Garcia fighting Rolando Romero, a hard-hitting, perennial contender type, a world-class contender of sorts. And Devin Haney fought Jose Ramirez, who was a former champion at 140, an Olympian, who himself was looking for redemption. He had, in his last several fights, there's been a decline for him as well. In the first fight of the night, there was a fight that was quite personal. It got pretty personal. It was Teofimo Lopez, the Ring Magazine junior welterweight champion of the world, defending his title against the interim champion and really the top contender, Arnold Barbosa Jr. Now, Arnold Barbosa Jr., coming into that fight, I believe was 32-0. And he's a tough guy, very tough guy. Didn't have much of an amateur background, but he was undefeated as a professional. He had just beaten Jack Catterall, who I was highly rating up to that point. It was a bit of a patty cake type of fight with Catterall. It was a touch and go, and Catterall really seems to rely on people being aggressive so he can counterpunch and try to be a fox in there. And he got outfoxed by Barbosa, and Barbosa's very tough, great chin, not the biggest puncher in the world, but, he'll sit down on his punches, but mostly in his division, he seems to be a bit tall, a bit rangy, smart, awkward, tough fighter with some good skills, a strong mind. He's a tough guy. Teofimo coming into the fight is coming off of a lot of controversies himself, allegations of racism and acting in a very weird way that's put off a lot of people. And he's kind of become the heel. He's become kind of a villain. And then boxing writers themselves were kind of writing him off for his recent performances. What happened with Teofimo Lopez was this kid came up, he was an Olympian, and a great amateur, had 170 amateur fights, made it to the Olympics, didn't medal or anything like that, turned pro, was a prospect with Top Rank, I believe. That he moved up pretty quick, and within, I think, 15 fights, if not less, he was fighting Lomachenko and put on the most masterful performance you have ever seen. Masterful, the way that he engaged Lomachenko, how he got rid of the angles, kept him at bay, got respect from him, was able to withstand Lomachenko's middle rounds rally, and completely dismantled him and won a terrific, terrific decision. But then afterwards, the success, it seems like, the fame, the money, the adulation might have gotten to him in his camp. And now he comes into the George Kambosos fight, this tough, rugged, world-class journeyman. He comes into that fight, I think, a little bit taking it for granted, maybe overlooking this guy. Now, he claims he's also had some health problems. There was a tear in his esophagus. He was having some issues. So between maybe overlooking this guy, and this guy is very tough. I mean, George Kambosos going into that fight, I had a sensation. I had the sense that it was going to be a tough fight. And the only reason I thought that was because Kambosos had spent a lot of time sparring with Manny Pacquiao. And I remember that Ruslan Provodnikov was also another incredibly tough guy who spent a lot of time sparring with Manny Pacquiao. So I just thought to myself, if you're a longtime sparring partner of Manny Pacquiao, okay, you're going to be tough. And he came into the fight with Tio. He dropped Tio in the first or second round. I can't remember which one. And it was a tough battle. I mean, Tio showed heart. He stood in the face of adversity, but rallied late, I believe, to knock down Kambosos, but ultimately lost. And that left a stain on Teofimo's career, from highs to all the way down. And he's been kind of building himself up. He moves to another division. He's reeled off several quality wins. He beats Josh Taylor, becomes the Ring Magazine Junior Welterweight Champion of the world. But a lot of writers seem to be writing him off. They're saying, look, this guy is inconsistent. This is what one writer told me. He's inconsistent. So let me digress. This fight coming into Fatal Fury was kind of like Teofimo's opportunity to reestablish himself as a premier fighter, as a pound-for-pound guy. Did we get pound for pound? This is a tough opponent. Arnold Barboza Jr. is a tough opponent to come off looking like a pound-for-pound guy. Came in, he dominated, he showed tremendous skill against a very tough guy that's hard to hit, that knows what he's doing, can handle himself well, that has a lot of passion. Arnold Barboza is a passionate guy. He's a real guy, and he's not a pushover. And the great Georgie Benton used to say, you win this one, you look good the next one. Now, Tio impressed with that victory, because to take, I think it had to have been 12. He might have won every single round in that fight. It might have been 11-1 or 10-2 or something. Barboza didn't really get an opportunity. He did hurt Tio at one point. But Teofimo Lopez was very smart, very tough. I think he gutted out, if I had to really put my finger on it, he gutted out a quality, hard-earned win against a real world-class guy. That's what he did, and he deserves all the respect in the world. And he did come to fight. It wasn't going to be easy. That style matchup was not going to be a war. It's impossible for that to be a war. It was a high-quality chess match. Both guys landed good punches. They both took great punches. And congratulations to Teofimo Lopez, who defended his title, proved that he is the champion at 140 pounds, as far as I'm concerned. Now, moving on to Devin Haney. Okay. Devin Haney's situation, I think, is very unique, because this was a quality amateur who turned pro, was very hyped up, very intelligent in the way that they've conducted their business. His father, Bill Haney, I think is probably a better promoter than he is a coach. I don't know how great of a coach. He must be a decent coach. I mean, look, his son has reached the highest levels of the sport, but they've been able to over-promote themselves. And I think that's the story with the Haneys, is that he's a good, decent fighter. I think, I think Haney, would I place him as a pound-for-pound guy? And I think that's the problem, is that they've overrated Haney. He's a very good fighter. He's a world-class fighter. He's a champion-level fighter. But when you start promoting someone as a generational great, I think you put a lot of pressure on them to produce results that they may not be able to produce. Not at the highest level. And you can see it's as if there's a race to the finish line, and then he starts to crumble as you get closer to that finish line, that pound-for-pound finish line. It just starts falling apart. The Lomachenko fight was controversial. A lot of people thought that he had lost the fight. I think he won some of the early rounds. He might have edged it out, but once Lomachenko, who started slow, started catching on somewhere in the middle of the middle rounds, he took over. And really, Haney, he recovered with the Pro Grace fight. He kind of dominated that guy. That guy didn't have as much experience or boxing skills as him, so he was able to take advantage of Prograis, who's a very tough world-class guy. You got to give a lot of credit to guys like Prograis, who I'm not sure his entire story. If he started late, his amateur career wasn't that deep, but made it to the championship level. Listen, Prograis fought Josh Taylor tooth and nail when Taylor was in his total prime. So you can't take away that is Haney's, I think, best victory. That is his most dominant victory. But coming into the Garcia fight, you can see that there was cracks in the armor. His legs weren't quite there. It's kind of like chicken legs. I think Rolly said he has chicken legs. There's an issue with his dexterity. There's an issue with his strength. He's not the biggest puncher in the world. He's not Sugar Ray Robinson. He's not Pernell Whitaker. Okay, he's not Floyd Mayweather. And that's the problem. They promoted him, his father, who's a great promoter, promoted him as the next Floyd Mayweather, and he's not quite, Floyd Mayweather. Devin Haney is more like Devin Alexander, another very good, solid, skillful junior welterweight and welterweight champion. He deserves the title. He worked hard for it, but he's not a pound-for-pound great. And they over-promoted him. So coming into this Ryan Garcia fight, which was a huge event, Garcia himself not an elite fighter as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, Ryan Garcia is another guy that was overly promoted. Someone who was a good amateur, started boxing young at a young age, built a great career for himself, got a lot of fame from this is the influencer era. So in the influencer era to create a social media presence helps to promote these guys. But the issue is popularity doesn't mean that you are one of the best of this generation. You can sell a lot of records, for example. Doesn't mean you're the greatest singer of all time. And Ryan Garcia and Haney are both, in my opinion, and I'm not trying to insult these guys, but they're kind of like B-plus fighters, or A-minus fighters who are being promoted as if they're pound-for-pound greats or generational talents. To me, they remind me more of the Bobby Chacon era. Good, solid TV fighters, especially Ryan Garcia, more than Haney. TV fighters who are entertaining. They get a lot of fans. They're selling tickets. And when they finally got together, Ryan Garcia came out on top. And now it's a year later, and here they are at Fatal Fury, showcasing themselves in what I call tune-up fights. And the issue is, and maybe this is the inexperience of Turki Al-Sheikh, but it just can't be, because he's surrounded by some of the most experienced people in the game. But these are tune-up fights. Ryan Garcia fighting Rolando Romero was supposed to be a tune-up fight, and people thought he would look good against Romero. They really have no respect for Romero at all. I hate to keep saying that I saw it coming. I don't want to toot my own horn here. I do have the proof that I thought that Rolly can be a great challenge here, because when you're dealing with a guy like Ryan Garcia, he's one-dimensional. He has one good punch. He doesn't have a great array of boxing skills. He's a tremendous athlete. The way I see Ryan Garcia is, you have a guy, for example, who has B-level skills, but he has A-plus level speed, hand speed, and he has a great punch. And in that one dimension, like Larry Merchant, again, to quote Larry Merchant, another great nugget, he used to say, he's one-dimensional, but what a hell of a dimension. He's one-dimensional, but what a hell of a dimension. And then when you look at Haney, for example, he's an all-around solid guy. There's nothing spectacular. He's not an athlete of any kind. He's not some kind of dynamic. He's not explosive. He doesn't hit particularly hard. He's not the most elusive. He's a well-rounded, solid, world-class, world championship level fighter. But if you step this guy up against a generational talent, let's say if you had put him in there, we can speculate, like a Tank Davis. I don't know how that would have turned out. Probably not good. It probably would have turned out really bad. But to digress, when these were supposed to be tune-up fights. So you have Haney coming in against Ramirez. Ramirez is on the decline. He's on a terrible decline. And this fight really showcased, because in front of him, he had a shot Haney. And this is my narrative for this fight, is that Devin Haney is shot. Maybe in the next fight he proves something different. But as far as I saw, he had no legs from the first bell. People said, well, he felt he tasted a punch from Ramirez and decided to get on his bike and run. As soon as the bell rang, there was no legs. He had no legs. His legs were very shaky. He didn't know where to go with it. He has an issue where, in the lead up to the fight, he was showcasing his tremendous physique. So he's gotten in this great shape. Whatever they did to get him in this Rambo-looking like shape. Like, you know, the issue is that looks are deceiving. You can look like you're really strong. It's like a bodybuilder, you know. They look incredibly powerful. Doesn't mean that they hit particularly hard, for example. And Devin Haney looked great. His body looked great. But as soon as the bell rang, the legs weren't there. He couldn't pull the trigger. For whatever reason, Haney is a shot fighter. It's the symptoms of a shot fighter. Unable to let your hands go. The legs look shaky. It sucks when a fighter gets old too young. Now look, there's another fight coming up. There's the Ryan Garcia fight coming up. But if I was the Haneys, I'd really have to sit down and look in the mirror and really evaluate. What's the point? If you've made millions of dollars, hopefully you didn't spend them, okay? And you're incredibly rich, maybe it's time to look for the exit. There is no preconceived notion here. There's no obligation that you have to fight until you're 35 or 38. There's no obligation that you just have to. This is not basketball. This is not baseball. You don't have to fight 1,000 times a year. You don't have to fight for 20 straight years. This, folks, is prize fighting. You fight for money, okay? My philosophy on prize fighting is very simple. If you've made your money, okay, and you've accomplished the things that you want to accomplish, you're done. Get the hell out of there. There's no reason to risk life and limb for nothing. If you can still do it, if you're still hungry, if you can still persevere and focus, if you can still get in the gym, if your body can still do it, by all means, keep going. But if you've made your money, there's no reason to just keep going back and risking your brain cells, risking your life. For what reason? Doesn't make any sense. And to me, as far as I see from this last fight, Devin Haney looked shot. He looks like he's done. No legs, can't pull the trigger. They set a record until Canelo and William Scull the next night set the record for the least punches thrown in a 12-round fight. Haney and Ramirez did. And look, Haney and Ramirez actually had rounds where they threw and landed nothing. This is the incredible part. You know, the great Willie Pep is once accredited with having won a round without throwing a single punch. And it's remembered as something artful. This is the same thing except the complete opposite. Like whatever Haney, whatever Willie Pep did, this is not it. Okay? This was bad. This was absolutely horrendous. This was absolutely just unbelievably terrible. Okay? And Ramirez had he had the opportunity of a lifetime right in front of him. I mean, it was like right there. The guy was shot. He has a big name. If you beat this guy, you're on top. I mean, you could be really, catch a lot of attention. You could make a big payday. And he couldn't pull the trigger either. Couldn't cut off the ring. Couldn't pull the trigger. If I was Ramirez's handlers, if I was Ramirez's family, if I cared about Ramirez, I would really start to have an honest conversation with him that maybe it's time to hang it up. That's what I saw. See, fight fans want to show up They want to see blood and guts and glory, and they want to see a war. They want to see knockdowns and knockouts. They want to see a good fight. Even if that doesn't exist, they want to see a good fight. But sometimes boxing is a story. It really is a drama. And sometimes the drama isn't in how much of a fight there was and how much of a lack of a fight there was. And you have to wonder, for Haney, what's the point of continuing after this? They have to go back to the drawing board and really evaluate, is it worth going back for any more beatings? If this is what, there's no way they could promote a Ryan Garcia fight after that debacle. As for Ryan Garcia, this is something that, he could come back. He's young. He seems healthy to me. I don't know how healthy he is mentally. And you have to wonder, for this guy, I think he's reached his peak. I think this is it. He's reached as high as you can possibly go. He's gotten as far as you can possibly go. When he did step up in class against Tank Davis, he got knocked out. Now, of course, there was plenty of excuses. My rib, I was dehydrated, and maybe those things are true. But look, he came out there swinging for the fences and got dropped twice and finished. I mean, his chin is not his ribs. So when he got hit in the chin, that's not your ribs. And, when he stepped up in class against Tank Davis, who I think, despite all this kind of fanboy criticism of Tank Davis, he is one of the best fighters of this generation at those weights. One of the biggest punching little men of all time at one of those weights, at those small weights of 100 and 135 pounds. But Ryan Garcia has done tremendous things in his career. A guy who's not quite a pound-for-pound level guy, got pound-for-pound level hype, pound-for-pound level promotion, and made tremendous amounts of money, tens of millions of dollars. How much more can you possibly go? Look, Ryan Garcia could possibly come back. There is a certain level that he should compete at, and I think there's plenty of good fights for him, but he probably should just take some time off and get himself together. And the Haneys have to ask themselves, is this over? Is my guy shot? Do I want to get him hurt? Imagine, they want to fight at 147. Who are you going to fight? Boots Ennis? Yeah, fight Boots Ennis if you want the beating of your life. Who, Brian Norman? Yeah, fight Brian Norman if you want to get knocked out. There's really not that many options left. To go back to my original philosophy, if you've made your money, when it's over, it's time to go. You got to learn to let it go, and you have to find a way to evolve. So let's move on to Rolando Romero. Now, why did I think Rolly had a great shot of beating Garcia, that he had a legitimate shot? Is because, look, this guy is not one of the most skillful guys you've ever seen, okay? But he's been knocked out a couple of times. He's lost. I feel he's been humbled in recent times. And in his last fight, he had to really gut out a disciplined, deliberate decision victory. He really redeemed himself. He humbled himself. He disciplined himself. He's got a great trainer. And they, instead of going in there rushing to get a knockout, they've slowed down the pace, and they've gotten a lot more patient. And he really had to gut out against Jaimez. In his last fight, he had to really gut out a solid workman victory against a tough guy. And then in this fight, this is a continuation. If you really think about the Ryan Garcia fight, it's a lot like a continuation of the last fight. And a lot of people want to say, well, Garcia's excuses, I felt flat, I felt weird, and this was weird, and that's weird. And that's the problem, is these stupid excuses that these guys make. Rolando Romero didn't make excuses. He's got some excuses. Let me take that back. I was dehydrated against Tank Davis. Yeah, Okay, you dehydrated. The guy was bringing it to Tank Davis from pillar to post. So from pillar to post, he wasn't dehydrated, but as soon as you got starched with the right hand, you was dehydrated. But let me digress. At some point, after a couple of knockout losses, okay, after getting knocked down by who he calls the toughest puncher, the hardest puncher he ever fought, Barroso, the old man, the old-looking man. He's like 40, but he looks like he's 85. You know, he's humbled himself, and he got a great trainer. He came in looking to continue the hard work of the previous fight, and that's what we saw. Look, the narrative of the Garcia fight is this: he's a one-armed fighter. He's got a left hook. He's got great speed and athleticism to deliver the left hook. If you take away the left hook, he doesn't have much else. Doesn't have much of a strategy, doesn't know where to go from it. He hasn't evolved. And, you know, I hate to say it, you know, do I want to blame Derek James? I don't. He didn't bring up Ryan Garcia, but it seems like some people go to Derek James because he's not going to press them. Maybe I'm wrong, you know, I'm probably going to catch flack for saying that, but you can go there and just be Hollywood and kind of do what you want to do, and he's not going to press you to do what he wants you to do. Look, Ryan Garcia was overlooking Romero. Everybody was. He was a great underdog. He's a one-dimensional guy with a great punch. I don't hate Ryan Garcia. I think he's great. I think that he's great for TV. I think styles make fights, but I think the real narrative for this fight, okay, is that the Haney-Garcia era, okay, it was great while it lasted. It was a drama while it lasted. They sold some tickets. They made some money. It was a lot of cannon fodder, but that era, guys, is over. That's it. That was it, okay? And everyone is upset as if like these guys are robots and just people should just keep giving you what you want. You don't always get what you want. Sorry, you don't always get what you want. Sometimes you don't get what you want. And in this case, that's what happened. It was the end of the road. These were tune-up fights, okay? These were tune-up fights that were placed on a platform, on a stage they didn't belong on. So usually what they used to do is you'll take these kinds of fights, put them on TV, and then build up to a pay-per-view bout. And this was like a pay-per-view style event filled with a bunch of tune-up fights where some of them, like Haney and Garcia, were coming, and Ramirez for that matter, coming off of long layoffs and to see where they were at. And we found out where they're at. They're shot. So the narrative of this story of the Fatal Fury event is two guys, Teofimo and Rolando, redeemed themselves. These are the guys that everyone was laughing at. They redeemed themselves. And then everyone that was very popular, okay, setting up the next big event, were completely shot. Shot. Done. Shot to pieces. And Ramirez, who was a decent world-class fighter, might have to consider hanging it up. There's no point of ending your career, ending at the end of your life, drooling on yourself in a nursing home, okay? I hope you made a lot of money. You're a great fighter. You had a great career, okay? But boxing is a dangerous sport, and there's no reason to end up senile. You can't even count your money. It doesn't make any sense, okay? So let's move on to tragedy number 2. Okay, this one. So if the Friday fights weren't bad enough, the Saturday Canelo fight was even worse. This was even worse than the previous fights. So Haney and Ramirez set a record for, what was it, least punches thrown and landed in a fight, and then Canelo and William Scull was like, hold our beers. Hold our beers. We're going to show you how this is really done. We're going to show up. one guy without the experience and any openings, okay, who was going to fight. They call it the Cuban style. I don't think that was quite the Cuban style. And then a Canelo who's clearly shot. That's the narrative of this weekend. Shot to pieces. This guy shot, that guy shot, everybody shot. And Canelo definitely is shot. Now, here's a narrative that's crept up in this fight. The narrative that people want to go by. How dare William Scull? William Scull, he ran. He just wanted to come in here and survive. He wanted to come in here and survive. You know how you survive? You throw 293 punches, and Canelo throws 150 punches. That's how you survive. Look, I made this point to some people, but I don't think that people quite want to accept this. Okay? Canelo is, 34, 35 years old. He's a Mexican fighter who's been fighting since he was 14 or 15 years old. These guys are shot by the time they're 32 or 33. And guys like Barrera and Morales, the end came pretty swiftly at the end. By 31, 32, they were done because they were taking very tough fights at the end. But Canelo, because he's been cherry picking, I'm not saying the Bivol. Bivol was his last great attempt at glory. But since then, I think they recognize that there's a decline. And that's why they won't fight Benavidez, and that's why they choose kind of guys that fits where he's at and what he can do. He wants to make money, he wants to fight, but I think they recognize there's a decline. You can blame William Scull all you want. But if one guy doesn't have a punch, an opening to land, and the other guy doesn't give him one, and neither one of them open, they're both complicit in the shit show they created. Let's put this in perspective, okay? Canelo Alvarez fights Dimitri Bivol. Bivol is a guy who lets his hands go. He fights. He'll stand there. He'll brawl with you. He'll box with you. We've seen what he did with Beterbiev, okay? Now, Bivol threw over 700 punches at Canelo and only landed 150. Caleb Plant threw 100 punches at Canelo. He threw 400 punches at Canelo, something like 200 power punches, only landed 100. And because half of them were power punches, he got knocked out. The point here I'm trying to make is this. William Scull thought he can move around and counterpunch. He threw 293 punches. He landed 55. A lot of them were jabs. Canelo does not give you an opening. Someone could say, well, you got to create openings. Well, Canelo has to cut off the ring and make this guy fight. Both guys did not let their hands. One guy didn't want to let his hands go to give the other guy a counterpunch, and the other guy couldn't find an opening to land a power punch. That's the story of the fight. Two guys who didn't want to open up too much because they didn't want the other guy to counter them. And that's what happened there. But as for Canelo, the reason I say it's a sharp decline, that he could be shot at this point, is in the past, when a guy ran from him, like the Erslandy-Lara fight, I don't want to say ran. Lara fought a very good fight. But what Canelo did was he would up the volume. So if the guy was going to move and box him, and he has a lot of trouble with movers, he still, to this day, has so much problems with movers. What he did with Lara to salvage a controversial decision, was that if Lara threw one punch, he would throw 5 punches. He would just outwork Lara. He would throw a lot of punches, power punches, as much as he could, so he can give the impression that he's winning the round. So Lara could be doing some good work and jabbing him and countering him, but he would just try to overwhelm the guy with a volume of punches. To throw 150 punches in 12 rounds, it's like 12 punches a round, and land 4 punches a round, and every here or there, every once in a while, he lands a body punch. And you got people saying, oh, well, Canelo should have won 12 rounds to nothing. What drugs are you on? Okay? Canelo does not just get to show up and win fights just because. This weird idea that this is a this is a unification fight. This is a world title unification fight. Okay? William Scull has a belt. Canelo has belts. They show up to have a bout fairly officiated. So no, Canelo does not get to just win rounds because he showed up, and this guy has an obligation to sit there and just open up and let Canelo hit him. Some will say, well, Canelo was the aggressor. He walked forward. No, you have to be the effective aggressor. The effective aggressor. You have to move forward and be effective. Simply moving forward in a forward direction does not automatically win you the fight. Sorry, that's not the criteria. If he moved forward, he himself would need to be effective. Is landing 8 head punches in 12 rounds effective? Is throwing 150 total punches effective? Is landing 40 body punches in 12 rounds effective? The point is, for one reason or the other, neither guy was effective. So the first 2 scorecards that had it sort of close, I think those were accurate scorecards. And I know Danny Jacobs had it close. And the reason is probably those body punches in some crucial rounds probably won Canelo the fight. Canelo does not get to win fights just because he's showed up and his name is Canelo Alvarez. It doesn't work like that. It should not work like that. You know, he has to make an effort too. I don't care how many fights you've had. It's not Skull's job to come and show up. See, this is the remnant of the bullshit Mayweather era where, you know what, your job is to show up and knock out Floyd Mayweather. And if you don't knock him out, well, you lost. Floyd could do nothing. He could do next to nothing. It's your job to come and beat him. I don't think so. I don't think so. You have to be effective too. And Canelo Alvarez was ineffective. Now, this brings me to this crucial point, to this important point. They're signed to fight. He's signed to fight in a super fight, the pound-for-pound best fighter in the world, or maybe 2 or 3, Terence Crawford, multi-division, welterweight, junior welterweight, super junior middleweight champion of the world, Terence Crawford. And they're going to fight in September in a super fight where Crawford will traverse 2 divisions from 154 to 168 to take on Canelo Alvarez. Now, Crawford didn't look spectacular in his last fight against Madrimov, a really tough, dynamic guy who lets his hands go and is, very quick and moves around a lot and etc. And I felt that he probably should have even lost that fight, honestly. It was very, I don't know. He threw a lot of punches, but I felt like Madrimov might have been a little bit more accurate with the power punches. But listen, let's put that aside. This fight coming up against Canelo Alvarez could be in very big trouble. The guy can't let his hands go. This is not the Canelo of the past. And now you can clearly see why why he's been targeting this fight. He sees it. He's been seeing it. I've been seeing it. Anyone with a brain cell has been seeing the decline of Canelo Alvarez. This is 7 fights in a row that he's gone to a decision. That's the most in his entire career. Canelo Alvarez has never gone 7 consecutive decisions in his entire career. And some of the guys he fought in his prime, he used to sleep them cold. And now he's going to 7 consecutive decisions. Look, I don't think Canelo is going to just leave the pile of money that's going to be on this table. This money is going to be epic. This fight might end up selling, might be one of the biggest blockbuster money fights of this era. It's going to be a super fight, and the world's going to stand still while this unbelievable thing's going to happen. When Crawford moves up 2 divisions and fights Canelo Alvarez. And everyone's going to watch it. But here's the problem. Is Canelo Alvarez going to get knocked out? Everybody wants Canelo to take that big fight, let's say against Benavidez. And he decided to take this fight against Crawford. But when he got the decision over William Scull and Crawford jumped in the ring with him and they faced off, I think Canelo saw it. I think he saw it. I think I saw in his face that this was going to be a problem. Who knows, man? Is it too late to cancel the fight? Is it too late for him to back out, retire? I think he'll take it, but one thing about Canelo is this. He's been trying to avoid, I think, in one way or the other, he's been trying to avoid going out the way that great fighters have gone out in the past. And this is one of the great fighters of all time. Look at his record. Look what he's done. To turn pro at 15 and from 15 to remain undefeated until the Floyd fight, and then to still remain undefeated until the Bivol fight, where he had to move up to fight a exceptional light heavyweight champion. One of the great light heavyweight champions of all time, as far as I'm concerned. And to only incur, 2 losses in like 70 fights? Fighting from the time you're a teenager? That's crazy. Sure, Canelo's sort of one-dimensional. Sure, he doesn't handle movers very well. But this is one of the best fighters of this generation. Great chin, granite chin, spectacular power, skills, intelligence, perseverance, shape. I mean, he's really a great fighter. One of the great fighters. No one's perfect. Everyone expects everyone to be perfect all the time. He doesn't have to be perfect. He's a great fighter. And Crawford's a great fighter. But this is not the Canelo in his prime. This is clearly a shot Canelo. Can't let his hands go. He's been deduced down to one punch at a time. One punch at a time. And for a guy like Crawford, who's old himself, he's like 38, okay? He's like 37 or 38 years old. For a guy his age, the medicine, the remedy to age in boxing, the old school medicine, is that you take an old fighter, you put him in there with bigger fighters. Bigger, slower fighters. So for Crawford, who's chasing after the biggest payday, huge name, glory, legacy, while he still has something left, this is it. This is a smart move. And he can get knocked out. I mean, there's nothing. This is boxing. It's not like he's shown the greatest chin. He's never been knocked out. I mean, I think we've never seen him really down more than that one time. He's been shaken up a few times. A lot of fighters have been shaken up. I've seen, Floyd Mayweather had a great chin. He's been shaken up. Guys get shaken up, but so it's not like devoid of any danger, but you have to start wondering, is this the perfect fight for Terence Crawford? The biggest money against a big, slower guy who's throwing one punch at a time, and he can come in there and be smart and kind of roll the dice with some power punches. Look, I'll be watching. We'll all be watching. But if I was Canelo Alvarez, I've made somewhere north of $100 million, maybe a few $100 million. God knows what he's made. I've accomplished everything in the sport. I'm a multi-division world champion. I've just become undisputed at 168 again. I was even light heavyweight champion. It's over. It's over, bro. Call it a day. There's no need to just keep going on. Look, if the money's there and you want to take the risk in your body and you can go for it. Go for it. But, a conversation probably, I think this is the biggest narrative across these fights on Friday and Saturday, is that a few of these fighters need to really have a deep conversation with themselves and their loved ones and their handlers and wonder, hey, is it the end? And the problem with fight fans, is that we hate the end. We never want to see the end. We don't want the TV show to end. We don't want it to end. We want it to just keep going on forever. Too bad Muhammad Ali was not immortal. And he could just stay 28 forever and just fight for the rest of time. Every generation can just watch him fight. But the end is the end. It's the end of the world as we know it, guys. And it might be over for Canelo Alvarez. And I think the Crawford fight could be a very dangerous fight. And the same goes for Haney. I think if you step him up in class against a really live guy, he can get knocked out. And I think Ryan Garcia shouldn't even be in there if his mind is not right. If this guy's life is not put together, what's the point? What's the point? It doesn't even make any sense. And even Teofimo Lopez, this idea of fighting Boots Ennis, listen, okay? Why do that to yourself? Seriously, why do that to yourself? I get it. We all, nobody wants to think of themselves as lacking or they're not good enough, but this is a big, strong, hard-punching, dynamic, explosive athlete, and he's gonna put a beating on you, and it's just not worth it. Now, moving on to the next night, because the weekend's not over. Top Rank moves on to put on a great event in Las Vegas, and it's the Monster, the greatest Japanese boxing champion of all time, Naoya Inoue, and he defends his world title against, I believe his name is Ramon Cardenas. Okay, I believe Ramon Chacon Cardenas. Let me look it up here. Yeah, Ramon Cardenas. What a hell of a fighter. What a hell of a fighter this kid is. This kid is just something else. He comes in. I saw a little tape on him, and I even put like $5-10 just on the money line on the knockout. I put like $5 on the knockout just in case that he might knock out Inoue, because I saw the tape and I said, damn, he hides behind his shoulder. He's mischievous. He's got that cracking left hook. And I said, damn, he can catch Naoya with a punch, and maybe it could be lights out. And he's super tough. And he's a decent fighter, and he threads the needle well. And I put I sprinkled a little something on it just in case. And then Naoya, we saw in the dressing room, I saw Naoya eating cake. I said, damn, could they be overlooking this guy onto the MJ fight? See, that MJ fight, that's looming. There's foreshadowing here for that fight. But what a hell of a fight. What a hell of a fight. I mean, Cardenas came in there, knocked Naoya down. Naoya was hurt. He was shaken up. I mean, for a second there, he didn't know where he was at. He looked around. He was like, oh, my God. And got up and did what champions do. And it was an all-out war. That was the fight of the year. I don't care what anyone has to say. So far, the year's still early, but that's the fight of the year so far. That's a candidate for fight of the year. Cardenas showed the aspects that I felt was necessary to fight Naoya. See, to me, Naoya is not Sugar Ray Robinson. Well, no, I don't want to, not Sugar Ray so much. It's not total finesse. He's more like skillful, experienced, but really a dynamic, explosive athlete. So with guys, in my opinion, with guys like Inoue, they kind of remind me of Pacquiao, or they remind me of Roy Jones Jr. If you give them too much space, okay, they're so quick and they're so explosive that you're not going to be able to see the punches coming. And he's smart to boot. So these guys are smart, they're skillful, they know how to fight. But if you give them too much space, in that little realm that you give them, they're able to set you up in ways that you can't see coming because of the speed. An old school way to fight a southpaw, because a southpaw poses the same kind of optical challenge, let's call it. So a southpaw would pose that sort of kind of challenge to a right-handed fighter because of the angle. So one old school way to fight a southpaw is to close the distance. If you fight him on the inside, there's not much of a southpaw anymore. And if you take a guy that's dynamic and explosive like Inoue, and you fight him more on the inside, or you take away some of that distance that he can exploit, you can try to turn him into more of an ordinary fighter as much as possible and find ways to hurt him. And I felt like Cardenas in the early rounds did do that. He caught him. He was able to get in, thread the needle, and put Inoue down. The issue here is now experience. So Inoue gets back up, and they start having a Pier 6 brawl. The fight turns into a Pier 6 brawl round after round. So here's the issue, right? Cardenas' corner, Joel Diaz, once he says in several of the rounds, every time they've gone back to the corner, Joe Diaz, I want you to push him back. You need to walk him down. Okay? So they're imploring him to just keep coming forward. Just keep your foot on the gas pedal. Okay? So you have a guy who's never been 12 rounds against one of the greatest 12-round fighters in boxing history, having a Pier 6 brawl. It was a great fight, but at the end of the day, Cardenas just simply ran out of gas. And it would have better served him to have more of a complete strategy. So let's say you come in and slug it out with him, you hurt him, and then maybe you take a round and you give him some angles, you use your jab, you clinch a little bit, you try to rough him up on the inside, and don't try to brawl with him, and then come back the next round and brawl with him. That would have been better served him to try to make it a little later and maybe set him up, lull him back to sleep, and set up that punch again, set up a hard punch again, because he hurt Inoue to the body. He hurt Inoue to the head. Even in the round before the end, he was hurt. He hurt him to the head. He hurt him to the body. So he had the power. He could thread the needle. He had the right idea, but he ran out of road. Inoue still had plenty of road ahead, and he ran out of road. Now, some people are criticizing the stoppage. It seemed, look, he got hurt, it seemed like. Didn't seem so much hurt, but he was getting kind of overwhelmed, but he was still moving around. He wasn't really getting hit too clean, but the referee jumped in and stopped it. And some people said that it was too soon. Now, I think it could have been a little bit too soon. Sure. I mean, and he always felt dangerous to the very end. He felt that he was dangerous to the very, very end. So you don't want to fight stopped when you have such a big puncher, because what if he could throw a punch? But here's the problem. Joe Diaz in the corner made it he was very vocal that he'll stop the fight. He said, you're running out of gas. What do you say, that you're slowing down? And show me something, I'm going to stop the fight. Well, what's the referee going to do? If he hears the trainer doesn't have confidence that his guy can make it another round, he's going to keep a closer eye, and that exacerbated the referee's decision. He's saying, well, the trainer knows his guy, and he doesn't think this guy can make it another round. Now he's in the corner getting beat up. Might as well call it a day. And that's what happened there. And look, Cardenas, he protested a little at first, and then he seemed to accept it because he was in the zone. He could have kept going, and I guess the referee told him, I'm here to save you from yourself. But Inoue once again thrilled the fans. I have no criticism for this guy. People want to criticize his opponents or whatever, but look, for me, Inoue, what passes the smell test for me is when a fighter faces adversity. And a long time ago, Inoue fought Nonito Donaire, and I believe he got his jaw broken. And he fought a gutsy, tough, hard fight with a great former champion who's a big puncher, and he won a decision. And to me, there's nothing taken away from the Monster. The Monster is a legit guy. He's a tough guy. He can hit hard. He's an incredible athlete. He's quick. He's smart. He's not the most polished, I would say, the most polished guy. But that doesn't mean that he's easy to beat. It's going to take a bigger guy that can do what Cardenas could do, but a little bit more of a complete fighter. It's going to take more of a complete fighter, or it's going to take a guy who can hit real hard and punch in between and take it to Inoue and stop him in the first 5 rounds. That's what it's going to take. You either have to put him to sleep or you have to grind out a hard-fought battle with this guy over 12 rounds. Because one thing is for sure, Inoue doesn't lay down for nobody. for nobody. He's going to fight you tooth and nail. This guy is a warrior, and he's going to fight your ass. And you better come ready to die in there. But you have to come ready with a little bit more sophistication. So Cardenas showed that, listen, there's holes in this guy's game. Okay? And like a great athlete, he doesn't see all the punches coming all the time. But he makes adjustments. He has a lot of willpower. He's, ultimately perseverant. And he's not just going to hand over his title. You're going to have to knock his ass out. You're going to have to knock his ass out. And any talk about Inoue trying to fight Tank Davis at a catchweight or something, yeah, if you do that, you're going to get knocked out. It's that simple. If you're going to fight Tank Davis, you're going to get put to sleep. So I love Inoue, great fighter, one of the great action champions of today. Really a pound-for-pound guy. Tremendous. I can't wait to see him fight again. I think the MJ fight, I can't say his full name right now, but the MJ fight, his next scheduled fight against this little Rambo-looking guy. Hold on, let me look up this guy's record. This guy is unbelievable. He's like a little crazy Rambo goon. Okay? And they're set to fight next. And after what I saw this weekend, folks, don't miss that fight and don't blink. Don't blink. I need to practice his name. He's a little Uzbekistani goon. Just an absolute goon this guy is. And this guy, 13-1 with 10 knockouts. But let me tell you, this guy's like a little Rambo doll. Okay? It says here on his record at BoxRec that it's to be announced, but I'm pretty sure they signed to fight the Inoue fight. Maybe it's not totally official yet, but if that fight happens next, I will not miss that fight. Don't go get popcorn. Don't blink, because that's going to be a tremendous, tremendous fight. Okay, so we worked our way through, guys, the Fatal Fury, the tragedy, the Canelo fight, the Inoue fight. I wanted to just address one last thing about this weekend of boxing matches. Because a bunch of people are a bunch of old lady crybabies, okay? Because these guys are constantly complaining. They're always looking out the window. Why is that guy out there? What's he doing out there? Who's this guy? I never seen that guy. Oh, what's my neighbors doing? They're always, and they're always just sitting there crying all the time. Just crying. It's like, man, just shut up. Can't you just enjoy life? Just, you know what? Not every boxing weekend's gonna live up to the hype. It happens. We don't need to be hyperbolic and complain. And one of the growing narratives coming out of this weekend that's being peddled by Tim Bradley and of course some other people are like carrying this and I think maybe De La Hoya said something about it, and they're creating this narrative. Fighters are getting paid too much. Can you imagine? We're paying these guys too much money. Prize fighters in prize fighting for money. It's been about fighting for money since day one, literally, since before it was even legalized. And their complaint is, you know what? We need to make them broke and poor so they can fight for us, so they can tap dance for us the way we want. Can you imagine? If you pay a guy a lot of money and he blows up his career, oh well. That's on him, okay? These are fighters. A handful of guys like Mayweather, the Klitschko's, there's certain guys who are athletes, okay? They're athletes and they can stay disciplined and do all the workouts and stay focused no matter how much money they make. They could have made $7 gazillion trillion and then stay in the gym until they're 40 years old. That's a few guys in history, okay? People make money and then sometimes it's over. It happens. And if a guy blew up his career because he made so much money, good for him. Good for him. The remedy, because a fight didn't pan out the way you wanted it to, because it didn't live up to your expectations, is that we need to pay guys less money? Okay, stop smoking dust, bro. Okay, get off the drugs. I don't think these guys are getting paid enough money as far as I'm concerned. It's prize fighting. They're risking life and limb, for God's sakes. And because you didn't get the fight you wanted, you know what, man? If we just would have gave Haney 20 grand, if he was only worth 100,000, he would have came out there and fought for us. Are you kidding me? I mean, are you crazy? I've seen guys destroy their careers because they made $60,000. Okay? It happens. It's life. It's one event at a time. It's one fight at a time. Fighters fight one fight at a time, one night at a time. There's no guarantee how long this guy could fight, how many times he fights. He's a fighter. This is not basketball where you play so many games a year. This is not baseball where you go from city to city every night playing. This is not like mainstream sports. This is a fight. You prepare to fight a man for money. You have to prepare for it, and then you put your life on the line, and then you go in there, and people are losing track of what this is. This is not a regular sport. It's only a sport in the definition that it's a competition. That's where it begins and ends as a sport. This is fighting another person for money. For money. That's what you're doing. That's what these guys are doing. They train, get in shape, and go and commit violence against another person for money. Okay? And if they got a lot of money and they're done and that's it, they can't focus anymore, oh well. Then they should retire and if they're not fighting well, don't pay to watch them fight anymore. That's the way it goes. That's how the market controls the fight. If they can't sell tickets, they're not going to make the big money. No one's going to watch them. Maybe something's got to change. Maybe they retire. Maybe they, look for better matchups, whatever the case may be. But this idea that we need to keep fighters really poor, starving, so we can get better fights, so I can be more entertained. Take that bullshit somewhere else. That is completely asinine. That is asinine, okay? Anyway, I digress. Those are the fights for the weekend. I think I've pretty much said it all at this point about all those fights. I mean, to recap it, most of them were shot. Inoue once again thrilled the world. Cardenas was just a tremendous, tremendous fighter. I wish him the best of luck. And I wanted to mention something else because I was taken by surprise. A buddy of mine, his name is George Hernandez. George Hernandez, in my opinion, is one of the greatest corners and one of the greatest coaches of all time. Not a lot of people know who he is. Everyone in the boxing world, though, knows who he is. He's a great trainer. He used to train Michael Bennett. He was in Edwin Rosario's corner. He's a great trainer, in my opinion, one of the great trainers of all time. And his kid was in the first fight of the evening. Well, the second fight, I guess you had the fireman or something, the fire guy and the police. But the first fight of the card was a Japanese prospect making his debut. And this Japanese guy is like a big prospect. So I was surprised. I looked at it, I said, wait a minute. That's George and his kid. Let me look up this guy's name. This Japanese kid. I forget his name off the top of my head. I should have been a little bit more prepared with that. But his name, the kid who fought him, he's from the gym. I was there when he was just still an amateur, and his name is Levale Whittingon Jr. I want to extend my congratulations to Levale. Levale, you should be proud of yourself. Tremendous talent. Showed great skills. He impressed the broadcast team. And the broadcast team, Antonio Tarver, Jim Lampley, and these guys, they were like shocked to see that Levale was such a good fighter. They didn't expect it. They expected to see like a routine. A guy turns pro, fights someone with a losing record, 1-2 or whatever it was. And they expected to see really a fight that like a routine turning pro. that he'd just take this guy out, be done with it. Look, hurrah, look, we got ourselves another top prospect. And Levale Whittingon Jr., remember that name, because he really brought the fight. He showed great courage. He showed great skills. He's just in there tough. And that happens. Sometimes I think when you don't have the backing, the money behind you properly, you get put in there tough because you got to earn a living. And he got put in there tough, but he showed great courage, and he showed great tenacity and skill. And I really hope that whoever saw that, if there's money out there, get behind this kid. Imagine if you just got this guy real fights, that he can compete, instead of throwing him in the deep end, build him up. So I hope this created an opportunity for Levale. And the broadcast team was very surprised to see how good this kid was. But let me say this. I wasn't shocked at all. They don't understand that Chicago's no joke. George's guys are no joke. They're all tough guys. George can take anyone and turn him into a world-class tough guy. And that's what he did, and that's what he does with every single fighter. If you're in there with one of George's guys, okay, you're in there for a really tough night. And I felt like Levale was just a continuation of that precedent, of that legacy. If you're fighting a Chicago fighter, here's the thing. I wasn't surprised that Levale could really hang in there with this guy, because I've seen the vicious sparring matches. It's no joke. If you can make it in George's gym, and if you can make it in some of the rings in Chicago, and you got to think, a lot of your great fighters really grinded their teeth in Chicago, from Archie Moore, and a lot of your great fighters would be in the gyms. Those are vicious gyms, and those are really tough guys. And when you fight a Chicago fighter, you're in there with a real, real tough character. And Levale talked a big game. He coming into this fight at the press conference, he talked a bit of a big game, and the Japanese guy kind of laughed it off. I said, well, you got to do your talking in the ring. And I felt like he did do his talking in the ring. Look, I hope Levale has a great future, and I hope that he can get some fights that are more beneficial to him, because building this kid up, look at him. I thought it was a great performance. The Japanese kid also showed that he was real tough, showed his class. I thought it was a close decision. I think one of the cards was a little bit wider than it should have been. It was a close decision, and I thought Levale fought a great fight. So I just wanted to shout out George Hernandez and Levale Whittingon Jr. Congratulations. It was a great fight. I think we've discussed everything that I can possibly think of at this point. I think I've discussed it all. And we will have to wait till the next time to keep on talking with each other. So, this is your host, Tarek. And I hope that you can join me the next time, where we will discuss the sports of the day. Thank you, folks. And thanks for listening.